Welcome back. Welcome back to the League of Hustlers. And today we're going to be talking about Chapter 6 of The Science of Getting Rich. Welcome to the Low Book Club. I'm your co-host, HT.
Right, I'm CD Barnes.
And this is the League of Hustlers. All right, Chapter 6 of The Science of Getting Rich. Really, really insightful chapter, right? This chapter talks about some really interesting stuff. And it's titled, How Riches Come to You. How Riches Come to You. Now, if you've been following along, make sure you check the link in the description so you can get your copy if you're just joining us. If you've been following along, you'll see that each of these chapters kind of build upon each other, precept upon precept, okay? And it just keeps building and keeps building. And that's how the entire book is written. So now we are at Chapter 6, How Riches Come to You. And the real key points, let me share my screen here. The real key points that, we want to talk about coming out of this chapter really start to unfold some really insightful, perspectives that we need to have, right? When we're taking on this life of success or traveling to this road, down this road leading to success. All right. So Chapter 6, How Riches Come to You. First, one of the first lines that jumped out to me is Wallace Waddle starts off by saying, when I say to you that you do not have to drive sharp bargains, I do not mean that you have to do not have to drive any bargains at all, or that you are above the necessity for having any dealings with your fellow men. Okay, we talked about increasing life in Chapter 5 and how basically that everything, the whole universe is naturally trying to help you, right? Everything is being provided for you, from the air, the sun, the plants, the earth, and growing and oxygen and all of that. It wants you to grow. It wants you to live, right? It wants you to succeed. It's there for you, right? And so with that being said, though, you don't have to compete, right? You don't have to beat somebody else in order to put yourself up, right? In order for you to be successful, you don't have to put someone else down, or you don't have to step on someone else's back, right? And then it says, I mean that you will not need, okay, right here, you will not need to deal with them unfairly. You do not have to get something for nothing, okay? Key point right there. Let's see, is it gonna let me go? Another key point. Well, before we move on, you got something to add to that?
No, I mean, I think it's pretty straightforward. The point is basically that you don't have to be shiesty, essentially, or you don't have to go out of your way or do anything that's against your integrity, or you understand. It's just, your riches should come to you easily. And if you recall back in Chapter 5, a small part of it was about being creative, essentially. Right. So it's kind of like you're creating. It's not necessarily that you don't need to be competitive at all, because you do need to be competitive, but it's not totally competitive. You don't have to, go above and beyond your, competitors in your industry, as long as you're being creative and you're staying in your own lane, because we're all number one individuals. We're all unique. If you're truly being creative from within yourself and putting that into your business, you're right. Going to have a unique angle to begin with. And that unique angle is what's going to differentiate you from your competition. So you don't right. need to compete. And that's where your riches are going to come from. So it doesn't matter if there's 100 people that cut grass in your city and you feel like you want to cut grass. You don't have to go above and beyond to do this whole right. find ways to outcompete them. As long as you use your own originality and creativeness and infuse that into your business, that's what's going to give you the edge, and that's what's going to bring you your riches. And it's not that you don't need to take riches from anybody else. There's enough for everyone, and that's kind of how it all ties into the previous chapter. Number one, there's enough for everyone.
Right.
Number two, it's really your creativity that's going to, bring you your riches.
Or beat people, or cheat people that work for you, right? That's the other thing too, right? And there's this constant, right now we got the push for 15, right? The push for $15 minimum wage. And so there's this rhetoric going around of workers feeling like they're underpaid. Guess what? That's always been the case, right? Since, probably forever. Everyone, you know what I mean, as a worker feels like that they should be earning more, okay? And so just keeping that in mind, and what he's saying is that you don't have to underpay your workers either, right? Or you don't have to feel like that you are underpaying your workers if you're providing something else for them, right? Because the whole point is getting out of this mental attunement with negativity or with lack, right? All right, another piece, it says, it is God that worketh in you to will and to do, right? This is what Paul said, actually, right? Goes on to say, so you need not hesitate to ask largely. Your part is to focalize and express the desire to God. This is a difficult point with most people. They retain something of the old idea that poverty and self-sacrifice are pleasing to God. Wow. People retain something of the old idea that poverty and self-sacrifice is pleasing to God. They look upon poverty as part of the plan, a necessity of nature. They have the idea that God has finished his work and made all that he can make, and that the majority of men must stay poor because there is not enough to go around. They hold on to so much of this erroneous thought that they feel ashamed to ask for wealth. They try not to want more than a very modest competence, just enough to make them fairly comfortable. Wow. When I read this, it blew my mind, to be honest. It spoke a lot to me because, and I think we talked about this in the last chapter, and I'm sure other people have this thought too. I know people that I grew up with had this thought, but you kind of grow up thinking that you're supposed to sacrifice, right? Or that you're supposed to be impoverished. And people have, I don't know where I picked it up at, but just throughout my youth, it's like you have this negative idea of wealthy people. Like, oh, they did something bad to get their wealth, or they did, they cheated people, or they did this, they did that. And really that's not the case, right? And it's talking about how people think that that's what God wants. God wants us to be, like, woe is me and impoverished and stuff like that. And in some kind of way that makes you more religious than not. But it's not the case. If you really read the Bible, there are plenty of people who had massive amounts of success, whether it be in times of war or, in like cattle and land and just growing their tribe and stuff like that. You also had poverty people, but it was still self-sustained, right? And so I think that's something that really stood out about this with me. What about you, bro?
Yeah, I agree with that, man. This was a big, like aha moment for me too. I think definitely had like a similar, it's kind of like, it's a conflict of interest, you know what I mean, to some degree. At some point in time, you are given that idea that you shouldn't be rich, or not necessarily rich,
right?
But, there's some negative components associated with it.
For some reason. And it's like, what? Why?
You're being greedy,
right.
It's hard for a rich person to get into heaven, or it's a lot of stuff that's kind of coupled with that. And
right.
I think that the main thing is you have to understand, and once again, and the previous chapter kind of touches on all of this, you know what I mean? Before you get the money, you need to understand, you know what I mean, kind of the mentality going into it. The biggest thing is balance. There's nothing wrong with having abundance. And actually, you know what I mean? If, you know, a lot of this stuff is biblical, and you know what I mean? The entire premise is there's a lot of wealthy people.
It's spiritual, bro.
Right. It is. There's a lot of physically and naturally wealthy people in the text. And then they're telling you that, you know what I mean? Your father is rich in abundance, owns the cattle on 1,000 hills, streets paved with gold, and the land of milk and honey. You know what I mean? Like you're constantly trying to get to a place that's filled with riches. However, at the same time, you need to be poor. You know,
it doesn't make sense.
That's not the thing, that you need to be poor. What you need to have, like Ace was just saying, it's a spiritual thing. You need to have kind of that mentality that it's not you can't let the money make you.
There you go.
You know what I mean?
Right.
You can't let the money make you. You can't let this money come before your morals. You can't let the money come before your integrity. You can't let the money come before your family, your responsibilities. You know what I mean? Like the stuff that actually matters. So it's more so about having balance and a mature mind state going into it. That if you lose everything, you need to be in a position to where you should be able to gain all of these riches and be a good person, and at the same time lose all of these riches and still be that same good person. And that's kind of, you know, that's kind of how I see it, man. You need to be able to have yourself in a position internally where, you know, the money doesn't make you, you know, and that's, you know,
right.
Sometimes it's hard to kind of cope with that, because another part of culture also tells you money over everything. money. Right. You know, so
wilding.
There's a balance, you know what I mean? You got that side, money over everything. And you have people that saying, no, you need to be humble, be poor, and be happy with what you have and what you get, and only that, you know what I mean? But in the middle, there's a balance. Like, all right, you know what I mean? I can have an abundant lifestyle and be a good person and be of good service to my family, my community, and do God's will all at the same time. You know what I mean? It's a balance.
And with that, that intro piece, right? The next piece to that intro piece is highlighted right here, right? You do not have to beat anybody in business. And if you are in business, if you are in a business which does beat people, get out of it at once. All right. So Wallace Waddle says, get out of a business that beats people. And he says, give to every man more in use value than you take from him in cash value. Then you are adding to the life of the world by every business transaction. And he goes on to talk about this book, right? And he says, like, yo, yeah, the book may cost however much it costs, right? And if you think about it, it's just paper, right? It's not worth, right? These sheets of paper isn't worth how much it costs, but what's written on these sheets of paper is worth like way more. Okay, so the actual physical book, right, isn't worth. This physical book isn't worth. It is not worth what they charge for it, but what's written in this book is worth that, right? It's worth 100, 1,000, 1,000,000 times more, right? Because look how many lives it has changed. So if you're in a business that's straight up one of them kind of transactions which does harm to people or takes away from them, that's when the problem comes in there, right?
Yep, absolutely, man. Definitely a big chapter, a great chapter. You know, hopefully you're finding something good in this, you know, in our book club series. We're definitely going to keep this thing going. So if you haven't already, go out, pick up the book. We got the link. If, you know, you can go pick up your own copy. You can use our link. They got the YouTube audio books. Go find the book. Pick it up. You know, it's definitely a big help to putting you in the right mind frame of, you know, being prosperous, being productive, and being, you know, being wealthy and having that wealth mind state. So
yeah, man. Heck yeah. And join us next time. All right. Next week, we're going to come back with chapter 7. So hurry up. Go get the book. Link in the description, right? Pick up the book, and then you should get it, read up to chapter 7 if you haven't been following on. If you have, great, right? Let's keep moving forward. Hit us up if you have any questions at questions@leagueofhustlers.com. All right. So with each of these, we just want to jump in, talk about key points out of the chapter, and then jump out, right? To kind of keep the ball flowing, right? Keep the ball rolling. Okay. So until next time, it's been another episode of the League of Hustlers. Hustle up and go and get it.